Well, my friends, we have all that exciting fire back again this week in the lead up for Starship Flight 13, but I'm really excited to dive further into the issues that SpaceX has likely been tinkering with after the less than desirable outcome after the hot staging in Starship Flight 12. I think you are going to love this. With that, we've got loads of awesome stuff to dive into around this unique Starfall mission that launched for the first demo this week, the attempt to save a very important telescope before it's too late, Rocket Lab in a cat and mouse chase in orbit, and wow, check out what Blue Origin are up to. Yes, this one is packed.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Hey, Marcus House with you here, and let's first kick off with what everybody wants to know this week. How are things progressing with the upcoming Starship Flight 13 vehicles? After all, if SpaceX are really expecting this to be ready to fly in just a few weeks, we must be seeing plenty of action, right? Well, as a matter of fact, here we had the ship static fire stand rolling into Mega Bay 1 on Tuesday morning and coming right back out with Ship 40 on top, all ready to roll to Massey's for a fiery campaign. NSF got some awesome shots of the flaps deploying before it moved down Highway 4, where Sean was waiting to catch it rolling by. We love having those front row seats for these monsters in action. It really is pretty crazy that the public can get this close to these events, and it's encouraged by SpaceX too. Once arriving at Massey's, it sat by the entrance for some time while they prepared the static fire pad. Once it was ready, they got it nice and snug there and jumped right into testing once the sun came up. Ship 40 was already frosted up with a load of liquid oxygen and just a little liquid methane as usual. The flaps gave us a little wiggle there at the T-10 minute mark, and once the suspected T0 came, we saw two distinct flashes just below the ship along with some vapour, so a successful igniter test it seemed. Just 24 hours later, it was being filled again, but this time so that Ship 40 could perform its first static fire using a single brand new sea-level Raptor 3 engine. The flaps gave us another wiggle at the 10-minute mark, but this time it seemed to end up in a hold for quite a while. I've seen some speculating that this may have been intentional to simulate a coast phase before that in-flight burn would take place, which would make sense. Regardless, there it was finally roaring to life for a duration of about 15 seconds. Now, SpaceX's post that followed did say this test was full duration, which may have been an in-space deorbit burn demonstration, but this was as far into testing as Ship 40 would go during this round. The next obvious step should have been a full 6-engine static fire, but perhaps something showed up here in the test that still needs adjustments or an engine swap. Instead, here it was just yesterday, crossing into the afternoon on Friday, rolling back to the production site and right into Mega Bay 2. Now, the super heavy booster that goes with this one is still patiently waiting inside the Mega Bay for its static fire run as well, but we've not seen any action with that directly at this stage. We suspect it has its Raptor engines and grid fins installed in there, but we'll soon find out for sure. At Pad 2, where it will do that crazy full thrust static fire test, SpaceX still had water deluge testing going on early in the week, so it seems like they've been further tweaking that before they roll the booster out. At this point, we're just super happy to finally see that the ship has finally been out for at least some testing. After all, it rolled back from its initial cryo testing all the way back at the beginning of May. So yes, although it seems to have taken a while to see action for the vehicles for Flight 13, I think it's useful to clarify why this is likely to be. I've seen a number of comments from you guys thinking that they must be working hard fixing issues with the Super Heavy given the mess that followed the hot staging. Yes, indeed, the booster flipped in the wrong direction, which would have resulted in propellant sloshing around in unexpected ways, but was the fault of the Super Heavy demise simply just due to the flip being too fast, or the engines firing up too quickly with too much force? Or is it instead that the incorrect flip itself caused a lot of those following failures? That is a great question, and I realised after reading your comments that I had never really pulled this apart for you. Well, I really think you are going to like this, because everything to do with the rocket science and accuracy needed to pull off this almost magical looking hot staging process is so interesting. So sit back, nerds, this is really fun. First, let's visit what we know from inside of the version 3 Super Heavy booster. Yes, this is booster 18, which was scrapped after the side ruptured open at the Massey's test site, all due to problems that I'm not going to go back into right now. But what this did give us was an incredible view inside the now scrapped booster. As we could clearly see, there was no evidence of any sort of slosh baffles which were present inside the version 2 design. That protection was put in place to limit the damage that cryogenic liquid propellant causes when being hurled around in a hot stage flip. Yes, many tons of liquid smashing into the plumbing makes for a sad day, and that seems to have been what caused all sorts of drama in the Flight 12 Super Heavy aft. All of this suggests that SpaceX would be adding in new protection once again, and although it may well be true that SpaceX are reinforcing certain areas inside the Super Heavy version 3, we don't actually think that the booster itself was the main cause of those issues. If it had flipped in the intended direction as was designed, any of those incorrect forces that actually hit the Super Heavy in Flight 12 would have been very different. Let's focus on Flight 12's hot staging process. We see the booster flips to the left-hand side of the camera view here, which was certainly not what was expected. Slowing this right down as it moves off to the left of the camera, you can see the grid fin and the right side of the booster is getting hit hard by that exhaust, and that has made it spin out of control even faster in the wrong direction. Definitely, as they say, not nominal. So which way should we have seen it flip if everything went to plan? Well, just bear with me here because this can get a little confusing. Let's instead watch the last version 2 Starship to see a beautifully controlled flip in action. This was with Flight 11, and as you can see, it moves very precisely upward toward the leeward side of the upper stage in the direction of that black space above. By flipping in this direction, that means it has less angle to move through to get back to that horizontal plane relative to the Earth. Flipping in any other direction is a much bigger correction, and of course, SpaceX spent a number of flights trying to get that flip right. Starship Flight 9 was the first that demonstrated that blocked off area of the hot stage ring that actually allowed them to correctly flip the booster in that intended up direction. Likewise, Flights 10 and 11, terrific control. Now compare this with Flight 12, and what a lot of people may not realise is that Starship is now flying inverted. Yes, the windward side, or the heat shield covered belly, is pointing upward toward space, and the leeward side is angled toward the ground. That means that the desired flip direction of the booster would now be moving in the opposite direction. That, I suspect, is for a good reason. There are only 3 grid fins on this version of the Super Heavy, and one there is right in the middle underneath. If the Starship stack was not inverted this time, the exhaust would just smash directly into this rudder grid fin on the windward side, which would be the opposite of what they want. So in the end, now inverted, it should have flipped upward towards space, which would have had it moving in this direction from the point of view of the camera. Does that make sense? I hope so. Anyway, instead of flipping directly upward towards space, it whipped out here to the left. Okay, fine, but why would that be the fault of the upper stage Starship? Well, let's first listen to what Dan Hewitt, the host, says here just before the hot staging event.
Once we get the hot staging, those 6 engines on the ship are going to ignite. Essentially, those 3 RVAC engines will ignite first. Almost immediately after, just one of those central engines is going to ignite, and that's going to give the booster a bit of a kick, sending it in a known direction, followed shortly after by the other 2.
Yes, they certainly wanted this to flip in a known direction. Now watch the Starship engine diagram in real time during this rapid process. Remember from our video a few weeks back that the live streamed camera footage is delayed by roughly 5 to 6 seconds after what we see in the telemetry information, so we'll synchronise this again just so it matches up. Did you see that? The vacuum Raptor engines didn't fire up at the same time like we've seen on previous flights. If you just blink, you would miss this in real time, but we see the bottom one on the windward side of the ship ignite first, then the vacuum engine on the left-hand side next along with the first sea level engine, and this leaves the last vacuum engine to fire up, followed by both of the 2 remaining sea level engines. So yeah, it may have only been literal milliseconds of difference here, but the fact that these 2 Raptor vacuum engines ignited here and here, that gave it an initial kick down and to the left of screen. If instead all 3 vacuum engines had fired up at the exact same time as was intended, they would have given it a nice even push backward, and then the first sea level would have kicked it down on screen toward space. Sure enough, we see the result very clearly. The top of the booster flips out to the left of the screen there, just as you would expect with that engine sequence. Again, this can be a tad confusing. We are looking down at the ship here in this view, but you need to imagine looking up at the ship's engines from below. The left engine is on this side, and when that fires up, the booster gets pushed out in the opposite direction. Likewise, the sea level engine that fires up first is up the top here on the leeward side of the ship, which should result in pushing the booster downward from the camera's point of view or upward towards space. Now, I can already see the comments saying that I have this logic backward. Comments telling me that if the top sea level engine fires first, that should push it in the same leeward direction. But no. Take a look at the steep dome at the top of the booster. The exhaust is going to be smashing into this steep curved surface at an angle and run right down that dome. This flow is going to push the booster in the opposite direction. It seems confusing perhaps because it's quite unlike the effect of the blocked off section of the old hot stage ring, which caught the exhaust and pushed it in that same direction. If we then take a look at the shielding on top of Booster 19, by the way, you may notice that the additional steel on top of the forward dome is giving added protection to these specific areas during that hot staging process. I'll come back to that in a moment, but first something a bit closer to home. One thing I never really appreciated until running a YouTube channel full time is just how much personal information about all of us is floating around online. There's loads of these businesses out there these days called data brokers whose job it is to just collect information like your name, address, phone numbers, family connections, and a whole lot more. Then they package it together into searchable profiles. That's one of the reasons I've been using Delete Me for quite a while now, and they are sponsoring this video. They are a hands-free service that helps remove your personal information from hundreds of these data broker and people search websites. Rather than spending countless hours tracking these sites down yourself, they do the work for you and continuously monitor and remove information as it reappears. What I like is they don't just fire off blanket removal requests. They actually verify where your information exists before taking action, and their privacy advisors are there if you need extra help. They've also been doing this for more than 15 years and were recently named Wirecutter's #1 data removal service. When I had first looked through my own reports, it was honestly surprising to see just how much information had been collected and how widely it had spread across different sites. I will say, seeing those removals happening automatically over time has been great to see, so check it out. You can get 20% off Delete Me consumer plans by going to joindeleteme.com/Marcus and use promo code Marcus at checkout. You can also scan the QR code right there on screen to get started. Thank you, Delete Me. Okay, so getting back to looking into the additional steel on top of that super heavy. These, as we can see, are areas that would spend more time exposed to the ship's exhaust. That's really insightful planning, right? It just didn't go as expected. Based on all of this, it seems more that the violent and unintended outcome from the separation was largely due to that Starship engine ignition sequence rather than the fault of a super heavy problem itself. The outcome may have been very different had it not been kicked off in the wrong direction. So anyway, because of all this, we suspect that a lot of the attention has actually been spent around the upper stage Starship side of things. Think of any tweaks that may be needed with those Starship engines to make sure that they fire up in the intended sequence. I will say though, having the data on the issues in the super heavy aft that followed would certainly have been very handy. They are probably taking that information and then adding in a few tweaks to make the internals more robust at the same time. I mean, just think of all the mechanical gymnastics and everything that needs to work together with millisecond precision just to have that booster flip in the correct direction. It's all just so incredible to me that it is even possible. You've got to balance out all that complexity and only reinforce the needed areas to keep the dry mass down. We know that the version 2 vehicle dry mass was much too heavy, and now the new Raptor 3 engines are a lot more powerful, so this new design, once they get it right, has a much better thrust to weight ratio and allows a lot more mass to orbit. We love diving right into this, so thanks for being here subscribed. It means the world to me that you watch along and are inspired by all this just like we are. Do keep those questions coming because it can be hard to know where you would like us to focus next. Super appreciate your time, and we just want to pack in as much intriguing stuff as we can for you every weekend. And of course, this is only just the start this week. Kicking off Falcon 9 action for the week, we had an interesting one with the Starfall demo, but first away on Sunday morning was Starlink Group 1728 from Vandenberg with one of the top in the reuse count. A massive 33 times this booster number 1068 had flown, and a thick cloud layer below as it punched through coming into land on the drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. In a similar fashion to last week's mission, SpaceX did share a neat little snippet of video with the stack of 24 as they were about to deploy, but again, no no deployment itself, sadly. Next up, it was that intriguing Starfall mission with booster 1078 lifting off from Slick 40 in Florida on Tuesday morning. Now, this was a demonstration payload, and as we soon found out, the most important payload of all. Yes, Starbase Brewing announced their second mission here with Microbrew 2, a critical brewery archive space exposure demonstrator mission holding dozens of different strains of brewing, distiller and wine yeasts from around the world. They are studying alcohol fermentation in microgravity, so you know, the future is wild, right? Getting back to the vehicle itself though, the Starfall capsule is hurled into space to then be used as a delivery vehicle that re-enters on a targeted trajectory. The idea is that this capsule, when ordered, can autonomously transport the payload within safely back to Earth at a predefined location. It seems like this can also be loaded with manufacturing hardware to run processes in orbit, which sounds like it would be well suited to medical experiments that could then be returned to Earth. I can only imagine the sweet biology testing that could be done cost effectively in this kind of way. A side note, I've been obsessed with this amazing content by the Clockwork channel, and I'm making my way through every video. That low-level biology just blows my mind, and this is for real one of the most underrated channels that I think I've ever come across. Check it out if you're into that sort of thing. I've got that linked in the description below. Now, the Starfall capsule is about 3/4 of a metre tall, so about 2.5 feet, and its diameter is just over 3 metres or 10 feet. Yeah, it isn't that large, and the idea I think is that you could stack these on a Falcon 9 or also a Starship in the future. It is supposed to weigh in at around 2.1 metric tonnes while being able to also carry about 1 tonne inside as the payload, so with a maximum total weight just over 3 tonnes, they could certainly stack multiple of these in a delivery vehicle. Much smaller and cheaper than something like a cargo Dragon. The point of this seems to be mass-producing experiments, delivering materials, or just military equipment that can be delivered point to point. After main engine cutoff and stage separation, we didn't get any more views of the second stage, so they seemed to be treating this similar to a more secretive mission like they do with the NRO. Nice ground shot of the stage separation there, by the way. The drone ship, a Shortwell of Gravitas, was waiting to catch this booster for its 29th flight, and that was the end of the stream. Interestingly, this demo unit actually stayed attached to the Falcon 9 second stage, which did the deorbit burn. Before entry, it released the Starfall capsule so that could re-enter the atmosphere and complete the parachute-assisted splashdown in the Pacific Ocean. That should have been splashing down just under 4 hours after it launched, but there wasn't any coverage of that. Thanks to Magnus B here, we did see SpaceX unload the retrieved spacecraft on the recovery vessel Shannon at the port of Long Beach, so we know for sure it has been recovered. Now, in this case, the Starfall demo didn't have any sort of traditional propulsion systems on board. All it had were a few pressure vessels to drive that attitude control system that it has on board. That means during re-entry it can keep pointing the heat shield in the optimal direction to not only safely enter, but to a degree slightly tweak the trajectory so that it can maintain an accurate path to the target. Finally, for Falcon 9 on Wednesday evening, there was another Starlink with Group 1745 taking off again from Vandenberg. So yeah, it was booster 1081 this time on its 25th flight, and back down there on Of Course I Still Love You for its second catch in under 4 days. Now, this sweet view was shared by Peter Beck from Rocket Lab the other day, simply saying, "Now we are on the hunt." What's that all about? Well, we had a recent unannounced surprise launch from Rocket Lab which was noticed by Jonathan McDowell and other orbit data trackers here last Friday. This was already speculated to have perhaps been the long-awaited tactically responsive space mission for the Space Force, and as it turns out, that was spot on. Rocket Lab finally announced earlier this week that this mission, dubbed Victus Haze, indeed successfully launched on Electron, and although this mission wasn't streamed live at the time, they did later publish the full stream instead on Tuesday this week. Rocket Lab built this Victus Haze Puma spacecraft themselves, and with just a 16-hour and 42-minute notice from the Space Force, it was launching. That's incredible, actually. Now, in this mission, the Electron rocket didn't have a kick stage. Instead, a similar sort of stage with a Curie engine is integrated with the Pioneer satellite bus itself. This means that technically this could be considered a 2-stage variant of the Electron, as the kick stage is really just integrated as part of the payload. There we had that payload separation, and after some quick spacecraft checks, they were officially on the hunt. On the hunt for what though? Well, True Anomaly was another company contracted by the Space Force to build the Jackal 4 satellite, which made its way to orbit on a Falcon 9 rideshare last month. The idea is that both of these spacecraft are now in a cat and mouse chase. They want to demonstrate and run this as a simulation mission as if they were in a threat response scenario. They're essentially trying to find each other and get as close as they can. If they can catch each other, they will be conducting a variety of dynamic space operations, collecting images and demonstrating rendezvous and proximity operation capabilities. Thanks to this tracking data, we knew that the Victus Haze spacecraft was within about 100 kilometers from the Jackal spacecraft just hours after its launch, so we are all keen to see a follow-up on this intriguing chase. It's great to see how much Rocket Lab is always up to these days. Saturday morning, just hours ago, they launched another Electron from New Zealand, sending up another Strix Earth observation satellite for Synspective. This mission, named 10 Owl of 10, was obviously the 10th Strix satellite to be launched on Electron overall, and of course everything was beautifully routine there as usual. Now we have the super intriguing Swift boost mission coming up in a few days, which is going to launch on the last ever Pegasus mission by Northrop Grumman. This mission, by the way, is an incredible attempt to revive a dying spacecraft, something that has not been achieved before. Yes, NASA's Swift observatory needs to be boosted back into a stable orbit before it re-enters the atmosphere. Catalyst Space, along with NASA, are going to see if they can save this still very useful space telescope. Swift was launched all the way back in 2004, and it's been locating interesting high-energy outbursts from space, automatically determining the position of them and rapidly scanning over them across a wide range of wavelengths using its ultraviolet, optical and X-ray telescopes. In fact, the versatility of Swift has therefore led to amazing observations over the years. Think gamma-ray bursts, which are some of the biggest and most mysterious explosions in the cosmos. Swift has this special ability to make rapid multi-wavelength follow-ups of such bursts and their afterglows using its telescopes, which can then help scientists guide other telescopes to the precise location for even more detailed observations. In other words, this wonderful instrument will be very hard to replace if it's lost, so we don't want to see that happen. Now this doesn't have any thrusters of its own to maintain its orbit, so that aerodynamic drag leaves it with only so long before it'll be lost. It was launched into a 585 kilometer orbit originally, and now that is all the way down to around 360 kilometers. NASA and Catalyst hope to launch this robotic spacecraft named Link, which, if all goes to plan, will gently approach the observatory, carefully capture it, and propel it to a similar orbit to where it started back in 2004. A second life, if you will. I think what's most extraordinary about this mission, though, is that they were awarded this $30 million contract from NASA just last September. Turning around such a mission in just under 9 months is unprecedented, so let's hope that it all goes to plan. Now, you know what else was neat to see? Check this out. What you're looking at here is Blue Origin's Power Tower. This is the mechanical tower that mounts on top of the Blue Moon Mark 1 lunar lander. Soon after touching down on the surface, this raises right up to a height of 26 meters or 85 feet, and then that extends out these solar panels vertically. It is so amazing to see real hardware in action. In fact, this is the sort of hardware that I've wanted to see around the Starship HLS design for years, so I am super thrilled to see all this stuff from Blue Origin. Now, with such a tall solar panel system, this should make it possible to land and operate on the edge of a permanently shadowed region for a long duration. Let's hope we indeed see New Glenn back in action as soon as possible so that we can see this baby on the way to the moon with the lander. As Dave Limp posted on Tuesday with this time-lapse compilation, wreckage recovery after the New Glenn explosion from start to finish was completed in only 9 days, and can you believe they've already started reconstruction with the plan still to fly again by the end of this year. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, you can also thank all these wonderful supporters that literally help out every single week to put all the effort that we can into these videos. Of course, don't forget to hit subscribe if you are new here, and at the same time, it means everything to us that you made it all the way through here to the end. Thank you so much. If you really loved that deep dive into the Starship separation and would like to see a lot more of that sort of thing, check out this video here next. Thanks again, my friends. I'll catch you next weekend.